away, and our son had autism. And I think that's the worst devastating thing that can ever happen to a parent. And when you hear people say that, it is true. There's nothing worse than losing a child. Nothing. I can tell you the worst day of my life was June the 10th, 2011. But I think you have two choices, and I've always felt this way. I'm a very optimistic, positive person, and I think that that's what's gotten me through this more so than ever is God. And that's how we've made it through this. Like I said, I'm an educator. I am in elementary education. I taught 30 years in public education, and I retired in 2017. Our son died in 2011, and so it was kind of like a 6-year project where we worked. And I always promised that, I promised my son Jared that I would never let his death be in vain. And so we worked very hard. We raised money. We started the nonprofit. It's called the Jared Braun Sparks Foundation, and it's for children who have autism. We do lots of events. Matter of fact, May the 11th, we're having our 7th annual Spring Festival. And if you'd like to volunteer, we'd love to have you. It's May the 11th, and I'll give you that information. You can write it down. But we started a nonprofit, and then we started another nonprofit, and it's the School of Hope. And it's downtown Fayetteville. It's behind Second Baptist Church. It's right there beside Beasley Broadcasting. It's a private school. Yes, did you have a question? Oh, no. But anyways, we are a K-7 school. We're adding a grade every year. Our first year we opened was last year, and boy, have I learned a lot. Like I said, I'm an elementary major. I never went to school to be an administrator. That was not something that I just thought, that I would want to do. So I've learned a lot. I learned a lot through the experience and hands-on. You can read a lot of things in books, but it never compares to the real life situation. And so now I'm a principal, and I'm also a teacher. I teach in school. I had to leave my kids, by the way, and I was doing their math things as quickly as I could. They were doing fact families today, and I was getting everything ready before I left. But our story is pretty unique. Like I said, we opened a school last year, and we had 5 students the first year, and then after that we had 20 students. We quadrupled in 1 year. And now we have about 11 children on our waiting list. And so we are going to increase each year. But my thing about education is that, especially, how many of y'all are any of you special ed majors? I know you are. Anybody regular ed major? Okay. Are you high school, junior high, elementary? What are you?
I was aiming towards high school.
Okay. And any particular area, science, social studies, what?
English.
Okay, great. And you?
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing.
Same thing, high school? God bless y'all. God bless y'all. I couldn't do it. God bless y'all. And a lot of people say I couldn't do elementary, but that's our passion. I think you have to know yourself. And you?
Oh, I was in art education, but
Okay.
I'm in painting now. I'm not even in the major anymore.
Okay. So you changed your mind, huh?
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's great. I think that, and you as well, sir.
Psychology.
Psychology, okay. So, and maybe I can interest you in learning more about autism. Autism is not going away. It used to be 1 out of every 10,000 people. When my son was born in 1992, it was 1 out of every 10,000 children had autism. Do you know what it is today? It's 1 out of about every 63 children. It went from 10,000 to 63. So it's not going away, and I predict somewhere in the future, probably within 10 years, it'll probably be 1 out of every 10 children. And somebody in your family will probably be affected by autism. So, it's something that maybe I can interest you in pursuing a little bit. We did ABA therapy, applied behavioral analysis therapy with our son. We were probably one of the first families to do that. It's a curriculum that's used. It's research-based. They do it with children who have autism, and we saw phenomenal growth with our son Jared. But anyways, as I was telling you, I was an elementary ed major for 30 years, and then when I was doing my undergrad at Oklahoma Christian College, I was going to do special ed. I was going to be a special ed teacher. And I can remember calling my mom and I said, this is not for me. Those children are not, those children are not for me. Well, the Lord really has a way of having a sense of humor. And 25 years later, I had a son with autism. And now I have a school, and I love what I do each and every day. And I haven't retired. I'm in another building in another area. But one thing I do want to say is, and I can say this to you because you changed your major, if you are not passionate about what you're doing, and it's not your love, don't do it. Don't get into education if it's not something that you're passionate about. Because you know what? First of all, the kids deserve the very best. The kids deserve the very best. And the next thing is, you deserve to be happy when you wake up every day. Because when you wake up every day, for 30 years I did it in public ed, I loved my job, loved it. And now things are a lot different. I could be every single one of yours, probably parents. My oldest children that I taught are like 37 now. But do you know they still keep in touch with me? Still keep in touch with me. And I taught them, and now they have children. So you see, you are making an impact, and you will make an impact. I can remember being 22. I was not always old, you guys. I just celebrated my 54th birthday. And so it has gone by just like that. But one thing that I can give you advice on is whatever major you choose, whether it be education or art, whatever you decide to do, be passionate about what you do. Because if you're not, it's not fair to the children that you're teaching, and it's not fair to you. And so that is one thing that I always tell people. I do apologize. I am so sorry. That is embarrassing. I apologize, you guys. I'm so sorry. I wanted to ask you, do you have any questions for me possibly? Go ahead.
I have a question. So you were talking about how it's gone from 1 out of every 10,000, you said, to 1 out of every
68, 63, something like that.
Do you think that's because there's been an increase in children with autism, or do you think it's an increase in, it's always been that high, it's just they were misdiagnosed before?
It could have been possibly the diagnosis, but I also think environmental factors, I think genetic makeup, and I also think that vaccinations have a lot to do with it. I know that can be a big controversy with a lot of people, but we believe that our son was vaccinated entry. The mercury, the thimerosal in the vaccinations that they use as preservatives. When you have the right genetic makeup, all of us have a different genetic makeup. And so, I have 3 children. Jared was my middle child that had autism. My daughter's perfectly fine. She's going to school to get her BSN in art. She's an RN, to be an RN. She's an LPN right now. But my son, he's graduated college and being a pilot. So, I think it's just, it depends upon the person, the genetic makeup, the environmental factors, all those things coming together. Whether I think it was misdiagnosed possibly, a lot of times people would put children who were disabled in a category as just being mentally retarded. I don't even like to use that word, but mentally disabled.
The reason I ask is because my uncle, and I mean, he's, oh goodness, I'm 44, so he's 60 something now. But he was originally diagnosed as mentally retarded. Then they diagnosed him something else, and come to find out, really, he has Asperger's. So he probably, way back when, should have been diagnosed with autism, but they didn't.
Well, they didn't know a lot about
what it was.
autism. And research is being done a lot on autism because of the prevalence and how it is increasing and how it is. I mean, there are a lot of things. People have lots of ideas of is it vaccinated injury, is it not, is it just you were born with autism, and people have their own feelings and ideas about that. But, that's neither here nor there. When you have a child with autism, you have to do something. You can't just, and I think anybody married in here? Anybody married? Anybody want to be married? Someday. Okay, all right. So, and those are things that, you and your spouse will have to think about, if you ever have children, those are things that you're gonna have to think about. But what I do wanna say though, more than anything today, is be passionate about what you're doing. Love what you're doing. Love the idea of getting up in the morning every day and making an impact on the children that you meet. I know you're doing high school. God bless you, like I said, I know your art and your high school. Okay, I'm just telling you, that's not my forte. I could not teach high school. I'm not geared towards that. I think it takes somebody very special to teach high school. But let me tell you something, you will influence somebody in your career. You will influence somebody, you will make a difference in the lives of somebody. My oldest students are about 37, 38. And they will message me, and it's so funny because things that I did when they were in my classroom over 30 years ago, they still remember. They'll say, I remember you singing with us, Miss Amy, or Miss Sparks, or I remember the tree house. I had a tree house in a bathtub, and I'll never forget one of my second graders in my first year of teaching said, I was a Miss Bryan. He said, Miss Bryan, we don't take a bath in that. I said, no, ma'am, we're not taking a bath in the bathtub. You're gonna read a book in the bathtub. And so, but he remembered that, and things that you think that kids will not remember, they will remember, okay? Any questions? I don't want to be the one doing all the talking. Go ahead.
Can you tell us more about your nonprofit
Yeah.
and like your first one and how you got it started?
Well, you have to file it with the Internal Revenue Service, and it's about $850, and you have to have bylaws, and you have to have board members, and you have to just follow it, to a T. And then you get your ISBN number, which is your, the number that you have for being a nonprofit. And then you have regulations and guidelines that you have to follow. You can go online and you can download, if you Google the way to become a nonprofit, it'll give you, it's about 40, 50 pages, but it goes through all the steps. And then I would encourage you to look and see if you can find an accountant that can go over things with you, facts with you, figures with you. Do you have a drive or a desire to start a nonprofit?
No, I was just curious.
Yeah. It took a long time. It was like I said, it was like a 6-year project. And then finally, when we opened the door in 2017, it was a sigh of relief. Like I said, we only had 5 students last year, but the word got out. And the need is so great here in this area because of children who have autism that we quadrupled in 1 year. And next year, like I said, we already have a waiting list. I meet with people regularly. I have probably 1 or 2 parents that come at least every other week to talk with me about their children and how they can make an impact.
Yeah, I wondered if you would talk to them a little bit about, and I know this is a long time ago, your struggle with the Fort Bragg schools
Oh, yes.
and Jared, and getting them, the school system to deal with what needed to be done.
Our son was the youngest, probably one of the youngest children to attend the Fort Bragg schools. He was 2 and a half, and I knew something was just not right. We couldn't go through a doorway. He would scream, he would have temper tantrums, and I'd already had a little girl, and Kelsey was 14 months older than Jared. And so, I kind of compared her milestones with his, and I just noticed that, things just weren't right. You just have that intuition as a parent. And so I called the doctor one day and I said, he has temper tantrums all the time, and he repeatedly watched a certain show, Beauty and the Beast. I knew it by heart. He would play Beauty and the Beast over and over and over, because a lot of our children, even though they're not, no 2 autistic kids are the same, they do still have similar, characteristics, and they do have these habits that they have to do and repeat. And so Jared loved Beauty and the Beast, and that's all we watched in our house. But he had lots and lots of temper tantrums. Finally, I said, something's not right. So I had a developmental therapy place come in, and they came, and we took Jared to their center, and they diagnosed our son with autism. And it was really tough. I can remember finding out the day that we did. My husband cried, just bawling. And I told him, I said, you know what, we have 2 choices. 1, we can give up and quit. Or 2, we can dust ourselves off, get up, run and do things for Jared that we've never even thought about doing. And so we chose to do that. When he attended the Fort Bragg school system, you know, I don't know if you've heard of an IEP, it's an individual education plan. When a child has a disability, they have an IEP. And it's mandated by the law, you have to follow it. You can't just put a bunch of words on it and not follow it. Jared was the youngest person to go to the Fort Bragg school. He had a developmental preschool that wrote an IEP for him, so he went to school at 2.5 years old. Well, during that time, my husband's in the Air Force. He was in Afghanistan. I had 2 other small children. I just had a baby in July. He was diagnosed in September with autism. So I had 3 children, ages 3 and below. I worked full-time at the Fort Bragg school system. I taught 3rd grade. And here I have a child who's diagnosed with autism. So I'm putting him on the preschool handicap bus and him screaming his lungs out. No husband there. My mom's in a nursing home and I'm taking care of, you know, my family. And me crying every day, just turning around and tears just, you know, coming out of I'm sobbing, you know, because here I am. I can't stay home. I have to work financially. We had to do that. So I sent him to Fort Bragg schools. Well, he made very little progress. Very little progress. And I just kept searching. I thought, there's got to be something that's going to help my son. And I can remember, I'm a Christian, and I believe that God has lots of plans. And I remember specifically one morning driving my van, and I said, God, I know my son is autistic. I said, please help me find a way to reach him. And within a week, I got a postcard in mail about the Logos program, which is ABA therapy. And I went to a workshop, and it forever changed my life. And someone said something that impacted me greatly. They said, Amy, there's a window that's open for your son. And after that window closes, it can't be opened again. And I thought, no amount of money is ever going to stop me from helping my son. No amount of money. It's that mother bear in me, you know. And so I found out about ABA therapy, and I wanted to do it for our son. And I came home and told my husband, I said, he had gotten back from Afghanistan. And I told him, I said, I'm going to tell you something. I don't care if I have to eat beanie weenies for the rest of my life or bologna sandwiches. We're going to do ABA therapy for Jared. And so the search began, and now people recognize ABA therapy is research scientifically based. But back then, 26 years ago, Jared would have been 26 in April. They didn't recognize it then. Fort Bragg schools didn't recognize it either. And I had done all my homework. I raised over $100,000 for ABA therapy for my son. And you know how you have to humble yourself? You have to think about your child more than you think about yourself. And that's hard to ask people, look, help me. I can't do this. I can't financially afford this. Can you help me raise the money so that I can help save my son's life, basically? And so we raised over $100,000, and we did ABA therapy. We were the first family here in Fayetteville to do that. So after I did my homework, in 4 months, Jared had mastered 400 objectives. And this was part of our court case. We ended up suing the Fort Bragg School District, and we won our lawsuit. And Fort Bragg School had an IEP, and they had about 40 objectives on there. They couldn't master 40 objectives in 2 years. And we mastered, and we counted over 400 objectives in 4 months. So that told me right there that the program worked. Jared ate it up, and he was a child literally, and when I say literally, he was totally nonverbal. He did not speak. I waited for 5 years to hear my little boy say mama. I waited 7 years to hear him say I love you. When he was 7 years old, he told me he loved me for the first time. And the night before we lost our son, those were the last words my son said to me. So you can imagine how it impacted my life, waiting 5 years to hear my son say, Mama, or to hear him say, I love you, and waiting 7 years. And I get very emotional talking about this sometimes, and if I cry, it's okay, because guess what? That was my boy. Anyways, we went on this journey, and I saw that the progress that he made with ABA therapy. I went to the Fort Bragg school system, and I said, look, here's the proof. It works. They fought me tooth and nail. I mean, they fought me. And needless to say, guys, I worked for Fort Bragg. And so you can see the conflict of interest there. Here I am working for a school district that is not doing what they need to be doing for my son. How do I do this? So, you know what? My child's first, no matter what. Above any job, above anything, your family is first. Remember that. And so, we talked with them, we tried to work with them, we begged them, we pleaded with them. We said, look, we've tried it for 4 months. Look what Jared is able to do. He couldn't even put 2 blocks beside each other. If you said, do this, and you put 2 blocks beside each other, my son could not even put 2 blocks beside one another. He could do no imitating. Within about 8 months, he was building 12-block structures. And you would build a structure and say, well, okay. Say you're building your blocks over here, and you have a therapist that's on the other side of the table, and the therapist would build the 12-block structures, and she'd lift it up, and it'd already be built, and she'd say, do this, and Jared would start looking at her, and he would start imitating everything she was doing. Now remember, this was a child 5 or 6 months earlier that could not even put 2 blocks together. Now he's building 12-block structures, 16-block structures. And I'm taking, the little wooden blocks that are different colors and stuff. We use those in our therapy. Well, I presented it to the Fort Bragg school system. And basically, they didn't want to do it. And I said, oh, but you will do this because this works. And I want you to do the right thing for my son. So, we filed due process in 1997. And we sued the Fort Bragg School District. It took 7 years. We took it all the way to a U.S. federal district court. We were the first family in 12 years to get a favorable decision. You see, that's what happens with a lot of families when they're trying to be advocates for their kid. They're beat down, and you feel like you can't be consistent, so why even try? And so a lot of parents give up, but they mess with the wrong mama, because I was not going to give up for my son. And so we sued them. We won our lawsuit, and we were reimbursed for our ADA program. And all we asked them to pay for was a $30,000 program. We wanted to save our son's life. We wanted him in a regular classroom. You see, ADA believes in recovery. And there are different methods that people use in this area, and I'm not dogging those out, but whatever works for a child is what you're going to use. If they would have told me put peanut butter on your legs and walk to Alaska, then I would have started saying, where's Alaska? And give me some peanut butter. Whatever they told me to do is what I would have done for my son. And so it was a journey. It's been a big journey. But I think now that I've learned so much through my son was a great teacher. And I didn't even realize it, especially, being a special ed major. We always think that we're teaching them, but they're teaching us. And there's going to be kids in your high school classrooms that are going to impact your life greatly. There's going to be the one that doesn't know how to interact with his fellow peers. And something you may say may change the destiny for him. Maybe he's going to be contemplating, or she's going to be contemplating suicide. And maybe just somebody caring, being compassionate, showing them a little respect and love may be the very thing that changes their life. And so that's why I'm so passionate about teaching. And I tell people all the time, if this is not your passion, please don't do this. Because you can hurt students more than help them if you're not passionate about what you're doing. It is so different. And I remember my classes and taking my classes and everything. And I know things are a lot different than when I went to school. But, it's different when you read it, or it's different when you turn in a project, or it's different when whatever your classroom instructor